We are.
Hi, Dr. Rob. So
Good
we
evening,
were
Tammy.
in a meeting this morning and you shared a tweet that you untweeted.
Mm,
And I retweeted it, but I went to a 12-step meeting at lunchtime today and I shared that in the meeting, and then people were saying it back, like they heard that. So like it's that meaningful. So do you want to share what you tweeted?
sure. And I have to honestly say, I'm writing it down so I don't forget it. I can honestly say that this is by anonymous because I did research. And that doesn't mean I can take credit. It just means that I don't know who did it and I can give credit to. The statement was, addiction is the only prison with the locks on the inside. Addiction is the only prison with the locks on the inside. And well, you say why that moved you, Tammy. I know why it
Uh,
moved me.
I did, because I was like, yes, we are the only ones that keep us chained, and if we just are willing to do the work, and we get to be happy, joyous, and free. I use that phrase all the time. It's in the 12-step books. We can be happy, joyous, and free. That doesn't mean we'll be, like everything's lollipops and roses. It just means we have the ability to not live in lies and shame and the prison of things that we've created for ourselves, and then spread over all of our loved ones. So super meaningful to me. It's one of those, I will remember this, and share it
And she will.
again. I
Tammy
will. I
remembers
do.
all
I
the good
do.
stuff.
Yeah, I used like early in my recovery, um, uh, one of the old timers that I've now become used the elevator to recovery is broken. Please use the steps. And that resonated with me because you can't just because I'm an addict. I want to get it fast. Let's do it. Poof, get on to the next thing. And it was a good reminder that you have to do the work one step at a time. And again, then we get the benefits of recovery. So yeah, all those little phrases, that at first you go there and you go, this is kind of stupid. And then you go, oh, wait, these are how we remember the way we're supposed to live. Hallelujah.
One day at a time.
Yes.
I have to say that, I'm a little anxious
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah.
And I have to remind myself, oh, that's next week. I mean,
Hmm.
really, really.
Hmm.
Anyway, I know
Hmm.
that we both clean when we're anxious. So why don't we get more answering
We
questions?
do. We do. Okay. So the first question, um, can you give any tips on staying on your own side of the road during recovery? I don't really mean snooping or getting mad. I'm talking about being worried and sad often. I think this is from a betrayed partner, who is,
Hmm.
asking about that. So,
Well, the hard part here, Tammy, is that we don't know how long this struggle has been going on.
mhm.
So, if you are snooping at 3 weeks, I actually don't think that's such a bad thing. And if you're really mad at 2 months, I don't think that's such a bad thing. And I don't think that expressing what you feel or trying to have your concerns addressed is being selfish or staying on your side of the road. I think that is being on your side of the road. When you say, "Am I safe? Is this going to be okay? I'm really angry for what you did to me or how you left our relationship." That is being on your side of the road. You're not pointing a finger. You're saying my life has been affected. So, but on the other, well, and that the worrying and sad. Tammy, do you want to? So there's two pieces of this question. One is, I want to do this right, I think, to support the person I'm with. And I think that you need to be kinder to yourself and let whatever feelings, unless you start throwing plates or taking out weapons, I think you're probably good. And the other part, though, it seems like a separate question, Tammy. I was wondering if you wanted to touch on that one.
About being worried and sad often.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I talked to somebody earlier today. I talked to lots of people, but we're talking about grief, and this is absolutely part of the grieving process. Being worried and sad. The worried is, first of all, you've got no control over this, and like I use the serenity prayer a lot, which reminds me that the only thing I have control over is my actions and reactions. I can't control anybody's actions, and the more I'm invested in their behavior and outcomes, the more unhappy I'm likely to be, because people are people. They're going to do what they want to do. I still find myself getting caught in that. But I'm wondering if for you, nurturing yourself, taking care of yourself. I love that you're here. Are you getting support from other betrayed partners? I think that's how
Mm.
you kind of express the worry and the sad. And what's the old saying? Worry is like a rocking chair. It'll keep you moving, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. And I get that on some level, but your whole world has been turned upside down. So what is there that you can do that's constructive and useful for you, and then what is just not helpful? We did Dr. Rob did a podcast with Harriet Hunter about journaling. It's been talked about, like Debbie McCrae talks about it a lot in many of her things. There's a webinar about with Harriet Hunter about journaling as well. A lot, write it down. The worst thing for me is to have something trapped between my ears, because then it's going back and forth like a ping pong ball, versus if I put it down and I see it in black and white and go, okay, that's real. And like Dr. Rob said earlier, that's next week. So like just getting some framework of what really do you need to do and be concerned about, or do the next right thing, and what is completely beyond your control. But grief work, Debbie McCrae on sexandrelationshiphealing.com did 2 webinars on that topic, and I'm confident that there's grief work, the loss of the relationship you hope for, the person that you hoped your partner was, all of that's real.
Yeah, and I really, Tammy, appreciate your saying that, not only the grief part, but who wouldn't be worried? Who wouldn't be sad? Who wouldn't be in grief about the reality that what you had hoped your life would be, it's not, or at least it's not what you'd hoped. And I think the best part of what I heard Tammy say was connect to other people who are dealing with this, because not only do you get role models, but you got to gauge where you're at. Like, oh, when I walked in the door, I knew nothing. And now I'm in that worried stage. And then this is going to happen next, because you have people on either side of you who are dealing with the same thing. And it is embarrassing and it is uncomfortable. And everyone who walks in there says, oh, I don't belong here because it's not as bad as that. And of course, it is as bad as that, or you wouldn't have shown up. So anyway, and Tammy has, I think on Sex and Relationship Healing, all those resources are there, including resources that are for partners for free.
Hmm.
I'm really excited about the next question.
Which is, how would you define recovery?
So I thought about all kinds of things that people might want here, like how many days you've been sober, or recovery is not looking at porn, or all the I don't know, all of those kinds of things related to the acting out. But I really, really sat back and thought about this because I saw it before, and it's already up here, which is I want to have integrity. And I'm going to say what that means to me. It might be different for different people, but to me, the word integrity comes from the word integration, right? Bringing different things together into one so they can be integrated means they have integrity. You can have structural integrity. That means the pieces are holding the most strength. But for me, it means that I don't want you to know I don't want you to see me in the shower this morning. I don't want you to necessarily see me in my jammies, but if you thought, oh, Dr. Rob takes showers. Oh, Dr. Rob wears jammies. You would be like, oh my God, I didn't know that. If I do something that anyone would be concerned about or surprised at that's close to me, anyone who would, anything I want to hide, if I'm doing anything that I want to hide, if I'm acting in a way that leaves me trying to let these people know this I'm not in integrity. I don't have to let as everyone in to the same degree, but no matter who I'm talking to, whatever connection they have with me, I want to be the person I am. And I don't want to be faking who I am. I don't want to be faking what I say. And I don't want to manipulate you. And if you like me, you do. And if you don't like me, you don't. And there's some things in between. But I'm not attempting to, and this is the other part of it, it's not just my actions. I don't want to try to manipulate you by being this person with you and that person with this person, because that's also not integrity. So it really does have, I don't think it's that mystery, having your values and your ethics and who you are all aligned together, and staying out of, as Tammy was talking about, the craziness goes inside your head when I'm saying this to this person, and I'm acting this way over here, and these people need to not know about that. And I remember that, and it was like spinning, it was like juggling. And I just, that takes a lot of energy. I also don't want to live that way for me. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. It's being one person at every level as much as I can.
I agree. I thought integrity and congruence. So very, very aligned with what you shared. It's like I am one person, and yes, different people see me in different contexts, and that's all fine. And I too took a shower and I wear jammies and all of that, and it's all fine. I don't have to hide anything, from anyone. I don't live in the lies and secrets or defending, or trying to convince you that it is or it isn't. It's very freeing. And I think recovery is a process. I will add that it's, because I hear often, we've been in recovery for 3 weeks. And I'm like, you've been abstinent for 3 weeks. Recovery is a journey. If we had all the tools before, we wouldn't have acted out. It was a coping mechanism. So we learn all of those things, but it's a journey, and I invite you to embrace it, because it isn't, oh, you learned it all, now you're done.
I do want to say something about that journey. And I think this is, obviously addicts have issues, right? And we
Mhm.
would suggest that the issues come from some of reasonably early wounding, or, could be neglect, could be abuse, could be a lot of things that people aren't even aware of. But that does influence how you learn to be one person, the other person, how all of those things fit together. I'm going to say, Tammy, I think, oh, it defines recovery. Anyway, I'll come back to it. I'll make a note to myself. Why don't we move on? I want
Okay.
to write that down.
I'm
Go ahead.
the SAA in the relationship, and I'm struggling with how to deal with the shame of my past actions, cheating and abusive, and how to not selfishly question why my wife is staying with me through this. I resolved not to leave because of my shame, as I love her and blessed to have her, but I can't understand why she stays, and how to stop being upset that she is with me when I'm so terrible. So this feels like oh, I'm so horrible,
No,
you should leave. Yeah.
I just, um, so I'm going to say this to you in a way that others might not, and I think this is what makes me reasonably good at what I do. Is I think this is a very selfish. The whole question is very selfish. You're going to look at selfishness. You don't get to make decisions about other people. I don't. You don't get to make decisions for other people about who you are. She doesn't love me because of this, and I don't deserve to be loved because of that. That's all about you. She may be angry, she may be upset. I think it's a she, right? It's up
Hmm.
to your wife. Now, if we have things called projections in my world, which means something is so upsetting to me that I actually, I hate myself so much that I'll look at Tammy and say, oh, she must hate me too, even though, I don't know what she's thinking. It may well be that, you're thinking about you not wanting to be there. I don't know what this is about, but it's not about your partner, because she gets to make her own decisions and live her own life. And hopefully she has support from an expert therapist, and she doesn't write to Tammy, and she'll offer her support. But this is none of your business. I think we say one of those other sayings, what you think about me is none of my business. And if you're struggling with your self-esteem, take it to therapy, take it to someone else, but don't take it to her. You're lucky that she's still in a relationship. We have a saying in therapy, you would know this: never question a client who has affection towards you, is basically what we say. Because, if you hate me as a therapist, we need to figure out what's going on. But if you like me and you think we're having a good relationship, I don't need to say, why do you like me? We're just going to build from there. So why don't you just accept the way it is and build from there? So many people who come to Seeking Integrity, Tammy, every one of the men who I'm going to meet with tomorrow, one of the first questions they say, well, I came here because I want to know why. Why did this happen? And why am I like this? And why, and it doesn't matter. She wants to stay with you. Work on what you did with other people. Take your shame to your sponsor, to your therapist, and then don't deprive your wife of what she hasn't gotten so far, because you're so caught up in your self-hatred that you can't just show up for her, or worse, you're asking her to reassure you all the time. So really, this is your issue to deal with, and I would leave her alone. And why she has those feelings is none of your business. And if you are struggling with her having those feelings, you need to get help for that. It's not her problem.
And I don't hear anything of here's the work that I'm doing. All I hear is the focus on your wife and how horrible I
Mm.
am, and but I don't hear I'm going to a 12-step meeting every day. I'm doing your drop-ins. I'm doing the work groups on seeking integrity. I've done, sex addiction 101 and level 1 and 2. And I mean, I don't hear any of that. And I often he share, the why is mildly interesting and comes in layers, but the how do we address we have enough to address right now, and how do we move forward from here? So I would encourage you to take the focus off of her and why she's staying, and to focus on what you need to do to change, to be on the journey that we just talked about, being a lifelong journey.
Right.
That would be, in my opinion, a useful focus to change.
That is so great, Tammy, because if I don't feel that I am worthy of staying with someone, then I need to get out there and do a lot of things so that I feel that I am worthy. So if I feel unworthy for how I've hurt someone in our arena, I'm going to go to extra meetings. I'm going to really get into that therapy group. I'm going to, find some way to enjoy my free time without hurting people. I'm going to show through action things that are going to raise my self-esteem. And it's also going to make it easier for my spouse to see that I'm in recovery, and then I feel like I deserve it. So, so yeah, I think that you can find your way there, but by walking the walk, by doing the work, not necessarily by whining about by whining. No offense. Yes, Tammy, let's go.
Okay. I'm the betrayed partner, married 40 years. My SA husband did a full therapeutic disclosure, polygraph, etc., and we're both seeing CSATs and doing the recommended recovery working groups. He's been sexually sober for 4 months, and we're working on healing the relationship and moving back together after an in-home separation. If I've heard you correctly, you asked betrayed partners why they'd have sex with their SA when they don't feel safe. I find myself wanting to be sexually intimate, yet sometimes I feel safe and sometimes I don't. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I'm writing something down so I don't forget it. Um, so that's actually almost what I said. It's so close to what I said, but there's one word missing, and I think it might make a difference, which is I tell you guys not to have sex with someone you don't trust. That's what I say. So, feeling love for someone or close to someone or further away, that fades and goes, but trust either is or it isn't. I either trust you're going to steal from me or I don't, I might have suspicions, but once that's been broken, once your promises have, the lies have come out about the acting out, what almost every spouse tells me is the real meaningful break is the trust. I don't know what he or she is doing when they go out the door. So, um, anyway, back to feeling safe. I get it. I sometimes, well, I don't want to get into a metaphor. I sometimes feel safe with Tammy, and I sometimes don't feel safe with Tammy, but that doesn't
Oh,
mean I don't trust her. Well, you get angry at me, I get angry at you, such shit happens. But I never, this underlying sense of absolutely believing that she cares about me and it's my welfare she's looking out for. And, so the trust remains that I like you today or I don't like you today, that can shift. But underneath there's a solid basis of I know you would never betray me. I know you would never hurt me. I know you would never try to, whatever that is. And so I don't want to be sexual with someone that I'm going to feel bad about having been sexual the next day. And if I don't trust that in any way you're going to not act out, if I think at all you're going to act out, then how that means I'm not trusting you, And so it's all about that. There is something else, by the way. Oh, he's been sexually sober for 4 months. Okay, 4 months is having run residential centers for a long time, like Seeking Integrity, and really, I've done this work for many years. And Tammy will tell you, 4 months is very early. And especially for 4 months, there are many times when spouses will feel, okay, now I know why he's been distant in your case. Now, because I think it's a man. Now I know why he's been distant. Now I feel like I know things now. And it brings a sense of safety that wasn't there before. And it sometimes makes spouses feel closer. Like, okay, there are no more secrets. And now I feel closer. That's one reason why spouses might want to have sex. Another reason is if I have a lot of sex with him or her, maybe they won't go back out. Maybe I'll satisfy them. Another reason might be if we're having a lot of sex, we're going to get more connected. And so there are many reasons people have sex or feel like it or don't that aren't necessarily the right reasons. And for me, it is about safety, but even more, it's about trust. So anyway, Tammy, said a whole bunch of things. What do you got?
Well,
They've been
yeah, I
married
think
40 years, by the
I
way.
know, I was doing the 4 months to 40 years, 4 months to
Right.
40 years. So I get that. Now, is there a way, like, you're just coming back together, from your therapeutic separation? So maybe take
Right.
things slowly, as far as sexual intimacy, because remember, intimacy, lots of people have sex and they aren't intimate. So, Dr. David Fawcett has talked often about the sensate focus. Like, is there touch, holding hands? I mean, like, can you kind of date for a bit, and see where it
Right.
leads? But I think I trust your gut. What feels good to you, what feels right for you. There is
You,
no, like, at this point you do this and this point you do that. It really is, what does your sense of trust, where are you at, and be fully communicative about what your expectations are. I think that's the biggest thing, of what your expectations, what your boundaries are, physical and emotional.
motivations.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay.
I do want to have one more question, which is,
Hmm.
what is sex?
Hmm.
Is it like some kind of entry to some body part? Is it caressing genitals? Is it, because as Tammy said, there are many, many things that are sexual without being having sex. I can imagine, for example, being in a bathtub and having my partner just not even in the tub, just kind of scrubbing me up. And, there are many ways to be sensual. So when you find yourself wanting to be sexual, I would go with what Tammy said, which is, how can you move closer in a physical way or an emotional way that necessarily is not penetrative sex, or it's not going to lead there, and it's not going to lead there. I also think there is one more reason why spouses want to be sexual sometimes with the addicts in early recovery, is they're testing us. They want to know, like, let's say we're on 3 months of sobriety, and I'm not supposed to have sex with anyone during those 3 months. And you offer me in a warm, exciting way to be sexual. Well, we may have a great time, but I've also said to you, my agreements don't matter. And so there are many, many reasons. I would check your motivations. Why am I doing this? What does this mean to me? By the way, if you're in the Betrayed Partners group, you know, I actually, there's one more thing I want to say for you. I say it to addicts all the time. We can't learn unless we make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, we need to learn from them. So if you did have sex, how would it feel? How does it feel? Does it go bad this way? Does it go, you're not the sex addict. You can make mistakes in this area. So, and if he's got a problem with it and it drives him back to problem behavior, that's not your fault. That's his choice. So anyway, that's all I got.
Okay. Okay. So why does addiction continue long after the traumatic events have ended?
I'm writing it down. Um, First of all, so addiction is a symptom of something, and it's a symptom of a lifelong injury that the injury is very early, and the way that it plays out in adult life is with a desire to escape uh, difficult emotions, with a desire to numb yourself out. In other words, at a certain point in life when other people might have been learning, it's really great to depend on people and they're going to be there for me. And I really am safe when I'm uncomfortable and people will take care of me. In other words, basically, that I can reach out to others and they will respond to me. We didn't learn that. Many of us who grew up in more challenging environments learned to just focus on ourselves and not trust anybody. This is a brain thing. The things that I didn't learn when I was 4 about relationships, the things I didn't learn when I was 2 because my mother was in the psych hospital when I was 2, I cannot go back and recapture the feelings, thoughts, and emotions that I might have had I had a healthier experience. My brain would have been a different thing. So I have to live with what I have. And you can't go back into that childhood brain. I don't know if I ever talked to Tammy about this, but the way I sort of think about addiction recovery is, I think healthy people kind of resolve, deal with, heal from the inside out, and they know what to do. When they make a mistake, they fix it. When they are looking at what they feel, they accurately respond to their feeling, and they're responding to their native desire to talk to somebody or whatever. I want to isolate. So I can't depend on my insides to always inform my outsides, because my insides don't do a great job because they were hurt when I was very little. But I think what we do in recovery is we learn to grow from the outside in. So I start to look at different ways of living. I start to look at the ways my behavior is affected. I start to learn how I get in trouble and what gets me into trouble and how I can bend to heal. And it's sort of like our adult brain can look at it all and say, how do I manage this? Because the traumatic events, they're physical, they're psychological. You know, all that stuff about neural networks that you see in sci-fi? Well, that's actually how our brains work. And if you've got a particular groove going in a particular way, that's where the networks of memory and growth go. And if you are beaten from the time you are 2 to the time you're 7, believe me, the way your neural networks, your brain is laid out and how you respond to certain things, you're going to be like that the rest of your life. It's not going to go away. You're not going to be 7 again. So the trauma is, it's sort of like, here's a very simple example. If I sliced my arm when I was 3, you'd still see the scar. And so it's a long time since I sliced my arm. That was many, many years ago, but the scar doesn't go away. And it's like that in our learned brains, that once we have certain kinds of scars, we won't be able to make them go away, but we can learn to work around them and live with them. I wish I could have said that simpler.
That no, that was I tracked it, but yeah, addiction is a lifelong chronic condition. The American Society of Addiction Medicine, says that. I often say, like you said, it's a symptom, but it's like diabetes. You always have diabetes, and you can eat properly, exercise, and control it with diet and things like that, not need to take medication, but you will always have that tendency. I live in active recovery rather than living in active addiction. But my brain still, I have to think about things sometimes because my first thought is like, reactive, not proper. But I've learned. So you can learn. Okay.
Well, can I just say that, Tammy,
Yeah.
remember that book I had that I told you I needed to read? And it said, say the second thought that comes into
Yeah.
your mind.
First thought wrong. Second. Yeah. Say
You
the
know,
second thing. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
it's true for us.
Yeah. Yeah. My husband and daughter sometimes go, they look at me and I go, I know, but like it's a lot of work to think the right thoughts and do the right things. So, but we do. Okay. Most of the time. Can a man become a porn sex addict during midlife crisis? Is it naive to think that my husband did not have this problem before? That's a great question. They're all great questions. Don't get me wrong, but that's an interesting, like midlife, are there some tendencies? I know that there's some conditions too that, we've talked about, like Parkinson's medications and things like that, but lay that aside, what do you think?
Well, I really think these are two different questions.
Okay.
One is about, am I naive? Should I have
Hmm.
known? All of that. And boy, do I think there's 30 partners in this room that would say, I had no idea she or he was so good and they played me, and plus living with an addict is kind of like being a frog in the boiling water. You get more things get emptier and more distant and more disconnected. And you don't realize how far you've come in terms of, that kind of distance. So I, I also guess I want to say something about the naivete part, which is you must understand that your next door neighbor, well, let me say it like this. If you've got a kid who beat up every kid at school and he's in real trouble and he's, in juvenile hall, and his mother comes in and she says, oh, no, no, not my little boy. He couldn't have done that. Of course, he absolutely did. But our first response when we're thinking about people we love and we hear bad things about them is to say no. It's like a grief response.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are close to someone, you would be the last person who would want to see that they're doing something hurtful to you. Your neighbor can see it. The other people at church can see, oh, I don't think he's being, but we don't see it because we're so close to them and we wouldn't want to think that. So I think it's really cruel and mean to say, well, I can't believe he or she was the last to know, because I think when you're really close to someone, you would be the last to know. That's very codependent, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
The other part though is, I think people can pick up a lot of porn and a lot of, have adultery. I don't know what midlife crisis is, but when at a certain point they're feeling that they're moving into being older. I haven't gotten there, Tammy, maybe another 10 years. But in any case,
Me
I'm
too.
being silly. People have midlife crises and, their kids left for college or, whatever it is, their parents pass away. And for some people that does result in sexual acting out. For some people, it results in buying a new car. And some, people express their needs in different ways. But that's a whole different game. And no one becomes an addict at 37 or 53 or those. In fact, I don't think I've worked at anyone, Seeking Integrity is just one of the treatment centers. I've created a bunch of them in different places over time. And I can't imagine the last time that I heard somebody, well, they became a sex addict at, what I hear is something wasn't right when I was 12. I knew in my 20s that I was doing all these things that I thought like other teenagers had done, but by the time I got in my late 20s, I realized I was still doing all that stuff. I mean, even if it shows up, even the understanding comes later, you can look back on the behavior. So is it naive to think my husband didn't have this problem before? No, absolutely not. Can he become this during a midlife crisis? Not an addict. Maybe experiment, maybe act out, maybe hurt you, but not addict. Addict is a lifelong chronic problem. Now, I'll add one more thing. If he weighed 350 pounds, he might have other kinds of addictions going on. You would have seen that too. And some people flip. Like I had a patient who got one of those bands for their stomach, whatever, and
Huh?
they lost 200 pounds. And all of a sudden they were picking up everyone they could because they could, and they weren't able to eat anymore. So they had to find some way to get that whole brain thing going. So, you know, it can shift it from one addiction to another, but I don't think it just shows up when you're, 42. That's my experience.
I was
Do you think,
thinking
Tammy?
was there something else where, drinking, smoking, gaming, food is, food is a big one too. Is there spending, I mean, is there something else that was kind of compulsive, that you could have seen, glimpses of, but I also think, addiction escalates. So was it a little more hidden for a longer period of time? And now, the behavior has gotten more to the forefront. So, but I hope he's getting help so that at a midlife point, he doesn't continue this. So, okay. My husband
And
has been sober.
Tammy,
Go ahead.
I just want to say we have trained the folks in this room because we used to get chat after chat after chat after chat, and now everyone knows don't go in the chat, don't say. I think we got people well trained. I was like,
It
what did they
works
say to
so
us that
much
we don't know
better.
about?
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
anyway, sorry for the interruption.
so my husband has been sober for almost a year and is a 12-step program. He's doing good. And I thought I was doing well in my own recovery, but all of a sudden I am so angry again. And there's no specific reason why. My husband told me I needed to talk to someone and I wanted to punch him because he is the last person I want to give me advice. I hear you. He's the reason I am where I am. What is wrong with me and where did this come from? Which has been completely out of the blue. I'm sorry, but I can say, I can so appreciate your wanting to punch him. I'm glad you didn't because you didn't say, and then I did. So
Well, I question the thing about I was doing well in my recovery, but
I
I'm
thought
so
I was
angry
doing
again,
well.
and there's no.
No.
So be doing well in your recovery may mean being really furious. It may mean being really sad. A year out is, I've written books about this. 18 months is my outside. So, and I also know that I don't believe you that there's no reason why. I think you don't see it, but you feel it. Whether it's distance, whether it's wow, they were a little later than I thought they would be. You're getting something that on some level, because I absolutely think that you're triggered for a good reason. Now, people get triggered for all kinds of reasons. I mean, they see a billboard and they think that's the just like the person my partner was with, and then all of a sudden they're furious, even though 5 minutes before they were fine. We get triggered. We get triggered by it being a year. When my
Mm-hmm.
mom died, every May or so, I'd get kind of say it took me a while to realize, oh, that's when mom died. And so that feeling comes up, maybe hitting a year, maybe it's an anniversary. But this whole idea, I think, of you having a timeline for your feelings is really unfair to you. And I think as it starts to turn the 12 months, something's not right, whether he or she is not empathic enough, doesn't really seem to understand what you're going through. And I really don't like that. I know what Tammy's going to say. My husband told me that I needed to talk to someone and I wanted to punch him. I would have wanted to punch him too, but let me leave that to Tammy.
It's, yeah, because he's the reason you're
He's the victim.
in this room, I love what Dr. Rob said about it. Maybe that it's a year, and that there's something, tapping into that. I said earlier, journaling, maybe doing some journaling about that. I'm glad you're here. Go to the betrayed partner groups on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Give yourself some grace. My husband has handed me my running shoes. He's a brave man, and I was a ways into recovery but one time he held up my running shoes and he said, "Do you want to talk about that?" Because we were getting ready for a fight. "Do you want to talk about that after a run?" And I'm an addict though. I had the grace to shut my mouth and go for a run. That was the right choice for me. But yeah, like the other way around, not so much. So I'm glad you're here. But what do you need to do? And also remember, so I mentioned Debbie McCrae's webinar about grief earlier. She said it's not linear. So you can think, oh, I'm past all of this, like I did the first 2, 3, and then now I shouldn't have to deal with that again. And you will. Hopefully the like the waves of it aren't as big, or shorter or whatever, but that you start to feel like, okay, I know that that's coming, it's going to happen, and it may be at 2 years or whatever, or your marriage anniversary, whatever it is, just but I think we've talked about this in some of the groups too, is like it's the anniversary of something and people are prepared for that day, but they're not prepared for the day after, because it's like they're all set up, they've got support, and then there's the day after or something. And so just understanding that, there's really ebbs and flows. You're doing great. You're still here. You're doing the things that you need to do, but good self-care. What do you need to do to, lean into support for you? But good restraint too. So
I was going to add two things to that. Thank Tammy, which is one, you say that a feeling comes out of the blue. Maybe it's been building for a while.
mm,
Maybe you weren't expecting that to just, take the lid off, but maybe something happened that, reminded you or something like that. The other thing is, you are expressing, I wanted to punch him, just saying. And he's the last person I would want to. Um, he's why I'm here. You are very angry. And I don't think that's just come out of the dark. I think maybe you had a good spell and things are better. Also, sometimes spouses get really hopeful, like, oh, they
mm,
understand the problem and everything's gonna get better. And then you realize, no, the person I'm married to is still a jerk. It's just maybe they are not acting out. So, yeah, I would really get support from other people again and see where they're at and understand. I guess one more thing. I'm just full of babbling today, Tammy. One of my best friends passed away last fall, and I did a lot of weeping, a lot of crying, spent a lot of time with his family. And where are we now? April? And I said to myself, I'm over that grieving. I think I'm feeling better about that, and I'm ready to. And I saw something the other day, and I thought of him, and I was, full of sadness. And I didn't question why am I sad again after thought I was feeling better. I just understood it, and I wish you'd be kinder to yourself. You don't have to look for the reason why. It just is. Feelings just are. So I would just really be kind to yourself. You've been through a lot.
yeah, yeah. Good self-care. What do you need for you apart from him? So okay, I listen to Porn Free Radio. He says not to use label addict. I've never heard of Porn Free Radio, but maybe you have.
I have.
He says not to use label addict, and he says porn served a purpose and not to focus on that. But it seems that my husband living a secret life of fantasy and masturbation for 50 years has certainly affected him and me negatively. We've been married 41 years. Our counselor says he needs to show me 3 12-step groups a week and weekly counseling and get a sponsor. It's been 3 weeks and he's only doing 1 to 2 meetings a week. Should I give him more time?
Well, there's a lot of questions in this question, don't you
Yeah.
think?
Yes.
And do you want to pick some?
Well,
Go
the
one at a
first one
time?
that serves a purpose. Dr. Rob, well, and I did too. We talked about that a little bit ago. Yeah, it's a maladaptive coping mechanism. There's
Right.
always something underneath it. So um
Which
I
is, by the way,
personally
Tammy's talking
go
about
ahead.
addiction. Addiction
Mhm.
always has something. So when this person said porn serves a purpose, but you're not an addict, well, I don't know whether they're an addict or not, but what Tammy's saying, it does something on the surface to relieve something that's underneath. That's
Mhm.
usually the purpose. So I think that's accurate. What else about that, Tammy?
So the problematic, yeah, his secret life of fantasy, he's been detached from you, so it absolutely affects, you know, it's we talk about our program is for men with sex addiction, intimacy disorder, which includes
Mm,
porn addiction, but he can't be intimate with you, mean not about sex, but about connected if he's got this whole secret life, because he knows the whole thing and he's showing you a facade. He's showing you parts of things, but keeping it compartmentalized. So he has not been true and transparent with you, for the 41 years or however long he's been and doing this. So for your healthy boundaries, if the counselor said that he needs to do 3 12-step groups a week and counseling session and get a sponsor, and he's doing that on the half basis. I went to a 12-step meeting today. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point, so it's one of those where you can't straddle the fence of recovery. It's a picket fence. It's
well, it
painful. You get
hurts.
on one side or the other. So either yeah, what do you want to do? Dr. Rob often talks about boundaries. If you don't hold a boundary, addicts will, it'll be a sieve, of people going right on through it. So uh,
I wanted to talk more specifically about porn-free radio. And it's interesting, Tammy, because we had a staff meeting this morning, like sort of our admin executive kind of people, and we talked about how folks who are struggling seem to not understand expertise. And so and I do like them and I appreciate them in certain circumstances. There is a specific reason for a coach, but coaches are not for mental health. Coaches are not for this kind of work. And so, unfortunately, I think there are a lot of folks out there who maybe they've been through recovery, maybe they have been a sponsor, maybe they took a coaching training about business, and they want to put all this together. And so, when I think about porn free radio, I think about, and I kind of know some of these folks. They're very spirited, they're very passionate, they really want things to change. They may even be making a reasonable amount of money from the radio show but the bottom line is they're not experts. And I can sit here with 10 books and 5 treatment centers and a national I'll just say national reputation.
international, no.
And I can tell you, I'm an expert. You may like me, you may not, but I know my SHI poop. I said that for Tammy.
I got
And
it.
so, and so the bottom line is, what training does this person have? Where have they been to school? If you have, and by the way, not everyone believes in addiction, that's fine, but what's their solution? Is it just okay when that purpose is no longer being served, they're going to stop doing it? Because I got to tell you, I've I've had a lot of people who spent years and years in therapy, and they know exactly what is underlying their problem and how the purpose that it served, but they're still doing it. So I'm less interested in that it served a purpose in the beginning and more interested in, do you think your relationship would be better if he stopped? And you don't have to go much further than that because you're a little bit in the political, like, or whatever. You're like, is it right? Is it wrong? Is it good? Is it bad? I like the other part where you say, I think this is interfering with our relationship. Isn't that enough? Don't you get 50% of the say? It's like Tammy was saying. And if your spouse, like I have a lot of guys will say, oh, well, it doesn't affect our love life. It doesn't affect our this and it doesn't affect her. So I don't know why she thinks or he thinks it's such a big deal. I've heard that a lot, and there's nothing wrong with porn and it doesn't affect this or that. And I just say, but your spouse is upset about it. And so what difference does it make whether they're talking about laundry or porn or the thing is you're not paying attention to is they are not happy. And that is a priority. So my suggestion to you would be a little less worried about what's right and what's wrong and what you call it and just really have a conversation about if you are doing something and it really leaves me hurting, would you be willing to stop doing it? Could you stop doing it for a while? I'm not saying it's right or wrong or good and bad, but it makes me uncomfortable. And then I would look at what happens. Because if the behavior is more important than how you feel, then that addict word might really apply. Anyway, that's my response.
What about the should I give him more time? Why don't you respond to that too?
Um, Well, I think you have a thought about this, Tammy, or you wouldn't
No,
have
I
said
did.
that. So why don't
Well,
you
I
go
did
ahead?
because if this is what if this is what the therapist recommended and it's for the betterment of his life and your relationship, and he refuses to do that, the question comes to mind of why is he unwilling to actually do what he's suggested to do by the therapist. You're paying a professional to help, and he's still not doing it. So that to me makes me concerned that he doesn't have a high enough level of help to get where he needs to get. So,
No, he doesn't even get the basics of this.
right.
Part of this is you've been married such a long time, that frog in the boiling water thing.
Hmm.
The number one thing, well, when we run treatment, like we have a bunch of guys at Seeking Integrity right now, one of the things we ask their spouses to do and their partners is to write us a letter about what their experience has been like living with this person. So if I were going into treatment, my wife or husband would write a letter to the treatment center saying, this is the problems I've had in my relationship. And we do this because we want to bring the voice of not that you're not involved in treatment, but we also want to bring your voice into the room in a situation that doesn't involve you, a bunch of guys sitting around, so they can hear it more objectively. And two things, 90% of the time, the guys say, I've heard that 100 times, but you were saying it. And I think I've managed to block out what my spouse is saying and not really hear it. And, this is like the first time I'm hearing it again. And they're often very, very scared and upset that that wasn't who they thought they were. That's one thing I observe. But the important thing, to your point, is you would think that these letters that I get from spouses, from partners who we have in a treatment center, and I would say a good one, by the way, would be writing those letters and saying, he was, because we treat men, he was with this person, he was with that person, and he had sex with these people. And, I would expect, because you're being cheated on and hurt, that half your letter should be about that. This much is about that. What you write, your impact has been, is I've been lonely. I feel disengaged. I don't have someone to parent with me. He or she's just showing up, but they're not even really there. What I get is how painful the lack of trust, the lack of intimacy, the lack of engagement, and what is often abuse goes on. It's not just the sexual stuff that's hurting you guys. So when you are upset and hurt and you've been married that long, it can be easy to have adapted to things that other people would not put up with. Um, so I don't think it's about you giving him more time, as Tammy said. I think it's about you saying, how much longer do I want to put up with this? And empowering yourself. So
So the next question, how does one know if they are recovered enough and ready enough to date again? Any minimum requirements?
I love this question. I love, love, love this question, because the answer is you will never know. You will never know when you're recovered enough, and you will never know when you're ready to date again, ever, for the rest of your life. Never. So what do you do if you don't know how to do something? You go to other people and you say, can you help me? Because I will always, because of how my neuro net, I'll always pick the wrong person. I will always make a bad choice. I've made so many of them. So now, well, not now, but in the past, I had people close to me when I was starting dating, and they know who I'd been with, and they knew what I wanted, and they know what I didn't want, and they know what I would get obsessed about. And so I would go on a date, and then I would call them after and say, well, this is what they were like, and this is what they talked about. And I would say, and I can't wait to be with them again. They would say, I don't think that's a good idea. Just because, and I'd be like, just because they're still doing heroin and they're still married, but they seem so nice to me, because I can't see, I have blinders on, I don't, and that's why I don't think you're ever recovered enough to make decisions on your own in this area. I don't think you're ever ready enough. This is why we build a community of 12-step and recovery and therapy group, whatever it is, a clergy, groups within religious organizations, because we need to be held accountable. And especially when dating, I can just throw Christmas lights over that person, and they're everything I've ever wanted, and they're sparkly, and my friends are saying, what, are you kidding me? So I don't trust my own decisions in this area. I don't just really trust my own decisions about sex. So the way I get to recovery is by depending on other people who are not in my situation. They know me, but they can sit back and say, I know you're interested and attracted, but I don't think you're making a good choice. So if you don't have the people in your life who are in, who are working on these issues and who you can rely on, like a sponsor and a therapist and all that kind of folks, then you're not ready to date until you have those people in your life to go ask and say, should I date or I shouldn't? So if you have those people in your life, that's where you start. If you don't have those communities, then you start there before you're ready to date. That was a perfect answer. I love that
It
answer.
was really good. But like with everything else, this is in practice, and have accountability. I'm going to go out on the date. You need to call your sponsor beforehand. I mean, like you can create the structure and the safe space so that you can learn to do this. But we have to start somewhere, and we have to practice. So you won't do it perfectly, and you don't have to. But I'm glad you're asking the question too.
And I'm going
So
to throw two more things
go
out
ahead.
about that. Sorry. What is a date? It's like
Mhm.
earlier we asked, what is sex? Is a date meeting for the entire evening and having a couple of bottles of wine and have, candlelight and, is that a date? Or is it sitting in a coffee shop, getting to know each other and then going off to separate places? If you have the issues we have, then I think giving yourself the time to really know someone rather than being in a situation where you're going to fall is a problem. And I would have rules, by the way. I don't have sex for until I've known them for this long. I have to tell you this, Tammy. This never worked for me. I used to have 4 dates before I had sex with someone back when in the day. And this is how I did it. This wasn't recovery. But I'd say, oh, we had lunch together. That was a date. And oh, tonight we went to the grocery store. That was a date. And then in the morning, so I would get my 4 dates within like 24 hours so that I
Mhm.
could have sex with them. That's not good recovery.
Mhm.
So because I wasn't asking for feedback. But anyway, that's just a precious memory. Anything else for
And
what
a
do you
distant
think?
memory now. So,
Thank goodness.
okay. The next question: do you have any tips for battling intrusive thoughts that are imagery of my husband acting out with women I know? I am almost 3 months from full disclosure.
I bet you hear this a lot. Do you want to give it a start?
Well, yeah. I mean, it is terribly challenging. And particularly, I think um, double betrayal when it's people you know. Particularly when it's friends or relatives or whatever. But like, there's the betrayal by your supposed loved one, and then there's the betrayal by this other person that you were in relationship with. I think it's extra. The intrusive thoughts, the journaling I mentioned earlier, but I can't help but think that EMDR or some sort of trauma, because it has to be body trauma. I bet you're experiencing, as well. But unfortunately, and I say this when partners, they want to know, and I'm not saying that you were digging, but when people find and discover, like, you can't ever unhear, you can't unsee it. So then you do have to work on, that deeper level of trauma. But doing, some good trauma work just for this layer of stuff, it won't completely erase it, but it should help calm down the intrusive thoughts and body response. So
Tammy, I think what you were saying, I just wanted to expand upon, which is um, if I don't know you at all, and I'm going to use you as an example, it would concern me if you were a spouse who went into disclosure and for whatever reason were given someone's breast size, what their hair looked like, what it was like to have sex with the details. Because as you know, I can get out of my mind the fact that someone went to strip clubs. I can get out of my mind the fact that they looked at this kind of porn. But when partners start asking questions like, how long did it take, the specifics of sex, that's really hard to get out of your head. So this is a great lesson. I'm not saying this is true for this person, but for those who are watching and you say, and your spouse is saying, I want to learn every detail, every single, you really don't. Because you first of all, asking questions always makes you feel like I'm going to feel better when I ask the question. The truth is you often feel worse and have five more. But in this case, you may want to know details about his or her sexual life, but you're going to be stuck with this. And so just in a general way, I really encourage spouses to respect the boundary of graphic sexual details because it will come back and hurt you in this way. I don't think to me, and I want to agree with Tammy also, intrusive thoughts are a sign of trauma. They mean that, for example, people who have PTSD, They have post-traumatic stress disorder, like the people who've been through war and they're home and they've been home for 3 years, but they hear a helicopter go by and all of a sudden their heart is beating, or they wake up with intrusive thoughts. These are symptoms of PTSD. And so, certainly you should be seeing a professional. When Tammy says do EMDR, what EMDR is, it is a kind of therapy that is specifically targeted to trauma, but that person may not be your therapist. You might get sent there by someone to do this work. This is one of the, and I'll just say something about EMDR. It is one of the first methods of treatment we know that we have a lot of research to tell us that it reduces the reactivity of your trauma, so that something terrible may have happened to you and you just get completely overwhelmed when you think about it, remember whatever that, or something reminds you of it. And what EMDR does is it doesn't make you forget about it. And it doesn't numb it. It's just that some of that intensity comes down and you can say, yeah, that happened to me, but you're not filled with rage in it. So when you can target a specific issue like this, it may well be that EMDR can be helpful, but I would want to be seeing a good therapist. These really are therapy issues, but they're not unusual. I mean, this is not atypical. I do think you have to look at it as an emotional health issue. And instead of saying, what's wrong with me? We're not going to be done with this. And disclosure was 3 months ago. Maybe you want to see a professional and say, sometimes we have intrusive thoughts because situations that are going on in our life right now remind us of things that happened in the past, and all those feelings come rushing forward. So worth seeing a professional about, and good question.
So, is it possible to have just porn addiction and not be a sex addict? And yes, and on Seeking Integrity, we have a Porn Addiction 101 work group, because there are some people who have not had sex with like an affair partner or
Right.
prostitutes or in real person. Now it may be cam girl, cam boy versus in real life, but yeah, we actually created a group for people where it's all online, not touch, um, uh, versus the Sex Addiction 101. Both of them are on Seeking Integrity, but do you want to talk more about porn
Yeah,
addiction?
I mean, just very simply, we used to think that anyone who had a sex problem that was addictive was a sex addict. And what we started to realize is that porn addicts, they go into a room full of men or women who've had hundreds of sexual partners or many, many affairs, and they're just sitting at home by themselves. And they're thinking, well, I wish I had that. I'm just sitting by myself in front of a computer or a pad or whatever. So they really do need their own, or you guys do need your own separate way of looking at your issues, because you're so much more isolated. You're so much more taken away from the sort of regular theme of social life. So yes, it's absolutely possible. We're certainly seeing it in younger men who grew up with a lot of online porn. They would want to have, like, they would love to be a sex addict. They never got that far. And on the other hand, there are many sex addicts who might certainly do delve into porn even regularly, but there's so many more issues going on in terms of how they sexually act out. So absolutely yes. And as Tammy said, we do two different online courses, one in sex addiction and one in porn addiction, because they are significantly different enough and have significantly different enough audiences for us to want to teach two classes on those two different issues. So
The
yes,
sex
the answer is
addiction,
yes.
though, most, if not all, of the guys also struggle with porn addiction. So the sex addiction, it tends to be
Yes,
both, but the porn addiction, there is a separate category that they have not. So we have two more questions. Can we get them done? Okay.
sure.
So the first one is my husband. Let's see. My husband is a sex addict. I made him leave 2 years ago. It's the 516 timestamp. And
Thank you.
we only have money issues to discuss twice a year. I struggle to communicate with him because he manipulates every situation he can. Please give me advice on how to talk to him effectively when I need to. We have children and grandchildren, so we meet about once a month. He does things like try to sound nice to me, and I hate that.
Okay. Well, I guess to me, this is very basic, which is take out the sex addict part. I don't know why you're still married. I guess that would be a big question for me is, by the way, you didn't make him leave. He didn't want to leave. You would have worked on it and find a way to stay together. So you have both made a decision to not stay together. Sometimes I find when time has gone by like this and couples are really not moving to come together, that you need to more clearly acknowledge you're not going to. And if there are money issues and children involved, then I would want a lawyer because there's a lot of stuff, for example, if you kicked him out and he doesn't have the right amount of access to your kids, that can be his kids. That can be a legal issue, and he can say she's keeping me out or whatever that is. So I really think it would, and this is, I'm not a lawyer, I don't ascribe to be, but I do think from hearing this that you are worried about how much control you might have and safety in terms of his manipulations and money being an issue. So I would want some kind of professional, a mediator, someone who can help you walk through this stuff together. By the way, we're going to want to sound nice. I say take what you like and leave the rest. If he tries to manipulate you and sound nice, be manipulated back and say, oh, well, thank you very much. Do something productive with your anger. And Tammy, I've never really, I would recommend this, how we say something like, well, butter would never melt in their mouth. Or what's the other one? Brene Brown one, which is, oh, you poor dear, or, just be sweet and nice and, don't let him get to you. Just pretend you really care and still really love him. Those probably aren't the right answers, Tammy, but they amused
No.
me.
Well, no, I honestly, I would be contacting an attorney, like take it out of the two of you, a mediator, whatever. But yeah, I mean, at 2 years in, if this is how you guys, you're still feeling, there's probably no future together in a meaningful way. Being, the kids and grandkids, it's not their problem. So, taking the high road, I often say to people that, you're going to co-parent and co-grandparent forever. So finding a way to navigate that, be the nice person in the moment that you can possibly be, and then go do self-care before and after. So
And
last
I didn't
question.
read this
Go ahead.
properly. You guys don't have money issues. I'm sorry, Tammy. You have to talk about money issue twice a year, like
Right.
taxes or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I'd have someone else in the room.
Yeah.
I'd like to start meeting with our accountant when we do this. That's a way that way there isn't going to be all that tension. I don't even care if it's a junior secretary, just get somebody in there. So there's a third person, and that often brings down the tension because we don't want to embarrass ourselves in front of another person. So actually that's my best suggestion to you is don't go in there alone.
Right.
It's the last
Okay.
one.
Last is 539. My essay husband says he does not have triggers anymore. It has been 3 years and he goes to 12-step in therapy. I think he is not in good recovery. He still makes choices for him and not us. What can I do?
Well, they're different things, right? The fact that he makes choices for him and not for us is just being narcissistic and kind of a jerk. And that's a character defect. That's a character, a way of, that's who he is and something to be worked on either in therapy or the 12 steps, or we have a great treatment program to kick his butt around that. But it is not true that we don't have triggers. I mean, that's absolutely, I have triggers 25 years in. I still think on when certain circumstances are going on for me emotionally, much less than, pardon me, it used to be, but sometimes I'll get in some situation and I'll think, oh my God, all I want to do is go do that, or find that person, or it doesn't go away. So I mean, it is our go-to it's from the inside out. It's go-to from a very long time ago. It's not going to go away. That's why they call it a chronic problem. But can it be addressed on a consistent way? Yes. But will I always be triggered? Absolutely, because that's part of the problem. If I have diabetes, will it flare up if I don't tend to it? You bet. So addiction is a chronic problem that I need to continually attend to because I know I'm going to get triggered and I know I'm going to get into difficult situations. So I have to have this routine. And by the way, you got to trust yourself. You're asking these questions, you don't feel safe about something. Yeah. So Tammy, anything?
Oh, it's all, lips moving, don't believe actions. I absolutely read in this, I still think he's not in good recovery. He makes choices for him. Not, what you can you do? That's what you said. And what healthy boundaries do you need for you? And we've got a couples healing from betrayal work group starting May 5th. That's about grieving losses together. That's about communicating. It is, I mean, there's some very good components in there that may be very useful for the two of you. But I'm skeptical. Dr. Rob also, one final thing, did a podcast with Dr. Stan Tatkin that talked about We Do. And I love that one because it's the two of us together, with the relationship as the, what's good for our relationship is good for each of us. And what I hear is he's not making choices that are good for the relationship. He's still doing me, 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 which is what an active addict does. So, and whether he's acting out, I'm not saying he is, but it's the mentality of, me, 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 me is problematic. So yeah, on the podcasts are all listed on the sexandrelationshiphealing.com site. You'll find all the podcasts. Sex, Love, and Addiction. Dr. Stan Tatkin was the one I mentioned with Dr. Rob. They're all with Dr. Rob. Check them out. Okay, thanks for staying late, Dr. Rob. I appreciate it. Wanted
What's
to
for
get
dinner,
those
Tammy?
answered,
Oh,
so
right, you're in another state. Well,
I'm
there
in
you go.
another state. I'm gonna take the Bear Boy for a.
But it looks like we're in the same place. Doesn't it look like
It does, yeah. But I'm my
You're
daughter's
not.
dog Bear is. I'm doing bear care, so I'm gonna take Bear for a walk right now.
Are you sure the dog isn't taking care of you? No, anyway, have a good night. Nice to see you guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.